I'm not sure if any one of you remember what we learned last week. So let me just share my screen and do some review. Let's do that. Let's see. So we learned the code block and the code flow. Those are very important basic skills for any development work. So let's do an exercise to brush those on. So I have a dictionary, okay? So you see this is a dictionary, and I have 3 items in it. Can you write code to print the values out one by one? Only the values, not the key. Okay, so let me copy this to you, and I want every one of you try it. Okay, so as a review, because code block you see condition um, and the loop are very important. So I want you guys do this and spend 5 minutes on it, and I will check your work. 5 minutes. So write your Python scripts to print out the values one by one. So this is a dictionary, okay? Remember, this is a dictionary. I want you to print out the values one by one. Now think about that, how to do it. And then after 5 minutes, so at 6, 7, I will come to check your work. And if you finished before that, raise your hand. Okay, so let me stop sharing so you can focus on your work. And after that, after this exercise, I will ask Ryan and Alexia to demo the homework, and Ryan will go first, Alexia will go next. So you also prepare for that. First, let's do this exercise. So I ask you to print out the value one by one, and you have a dictionary. How can you get the values? And then how do you write the loop? Print them out. So if you know how to do that, 3 or 4 lines of scripts should get the job done for you. Only 3 or 4 lines of scripts, including the dictionary itself. You have 3 more minutes. And if anyone finished, you can raise your hand. Put your hands on the participants list so I know that you get it done. You have 3 more minutes. If you do not get an idea, then you just do a Google search. You just search the Python, get the values of a dictionary. That will help you. That is the requirement. This is the dictionary I gave to you. All right, time is up. Who finished? Nobody? Okay, let me check. So Patton, have you finished?
No, not yet.
Hunter, how about you? Hunter?
I haven't finished either yet.
Okay, how about you, Ryan?
I'm not finished either.
Okay, so let me give you 2 more minutes then. All right, it's 6:09. So let me check again. So April, have you finished it?
No, I haven't finished yet.
How about you, Kathleen?
I'm almost finished.
Yeah, almost. Okay. So Alexia,
I'm not finished yet.
all right. So Kathleen, do you mind sharing your screen so we can do it together? Because you are almost done, so I can work with you together. All right. So yeah, you get the dictionary right. But if you do that, you need to write 3 lines of print, right? Actually, I really want you guys to use loop to do it because I want you guys using code block. So then how do we do that? Does anyone have an idea? Nobody? All right. So let me share my screen then. So, okay, I have this is a dictionary. Let me copy this. I come back. So this is my dictionary. Okay, this is the dictionary, right? So what do I do? You know, we wanted to use a loop, right? How do we use it? We use a for my value in a dictionary, right? A dictionary, what you can get, you just use the values. So you get all the values. And then now you say print my value, right? So let me save my code. Then now let me run it. Let me run this code now. Okay, that's it, printed them all out. Zara, age is 7, and the school is Mandy Elementary School. So that, do we get all those values printed out? Do we get all the values printed out? Okay. So you
Can
say
you share
that,
your screen?
what?
Can you share your screen one more time so we can see that?
All right. So this is a loop, right? This is actually what I wanted to see from you. And you need to remember, if you use a dictionary values, that means you will get a list of values from the dictionary. So you just look through that list. So you can print the values one by one. Does this make sense to you all? Okay, April, does this make sense to you?
It makes sense.
Great. So I can move on, right? Okay, so let's have Ryan to present his homework. Ryan, do you mind to share your homework and then walk through it to the class? Alexia, you will be the next, okay?
So first I set x to 31 and y to 10. So while x is less than 0 or x is greater than 30, so I set it to 31, so this statement is true. I did a try and accept thing where it inputs a number between, where the user inputs a number between 0 and 30, and if it's a string, it prints invalid input, try again, and it continues until x is between 0 and 30 inclusively. Then it prints out the number that is chosen and the outputs. Then if x is less than y, I do a for loop between 0 and x and print out n plus x each time. If x is no less than y, then I do a range of y to x and print out n minus y.
Okay, can you run it so you can show the result to the class? Okay. All right, can you run it again and input a value less than 10? Okay. So does this code make sense to you for the whole class? Good. Okay, very good. All right, I think Ruan did something a little bit ahead of us, and that's the topic, and we are going to learn today. So that's the part of the try, accept, and also the while loop. And actually, I think the next homework will ask you to do that as well. So if you take a look at Ryan's code, if you want, make a screenshot of it. And then you see for the next homework. And I think you will need to use something that Ryan has already done here. All right, thank you very much, Ryan. And you can stop sharing. So let's get Alexia. Do you mind to present your homework to the class?
Okay. Should I explain?
Yes, I want you to explain.
I'm a little bad at explaining, but so at the top for X, it says please enter a number. So you randomly choose a number and assign it to X, and Y is 10. And for this, you want it in between 0 and 30. So okay, I'm bad at explaining.
Okay. All right, so let me explain because I asked
Okay.
yeah, because I asked you to do that. If X is less than Y, then you need to loop in from 0 to X. So that's 9, 6. And then you print out an N plus X, and that's 9, 7. So if it's not, okay, then I want you to loop from Y to X, right? I want you to loop from Y to X. So then you say line 9 and line 10. That's what I ask you guys to do. All right. So Alexia, can you copy all your code and put it into the chat window and give it to everyone? Copy it and give it to everyone. I can also use your code to do my lecture. Right. Can you stop
Okay.
sharing? Very good. So everyone, please copy Alexia's code. And let's copy the code and then let me share my screen. So this is the code that we got from Alexia. And I want you guys also copy it. And then now you run it. And then when the system asks you to type it, to enter a number, can you type in ABC and see what happens? So let me do it myself. All right, see ABC. What happens?
Error.
I got an error. And this could happen to your application. And if you ask the user to give you something, and if that user is not careful enough, or if that user is not cooperative enough, then he can break your application. And as a developer, we must consider that. And then you see there are a lot of hackers there, right? They're trying to just break your application, trying to get information out from your application. So you see our application is not robust. And this can happen in any programming language, not just Python. So what can we do? How can we make our application robust? You see, what caused the problem? Because you ask the user to input a number, but the user gives you a string, and then you wanted to convert the string to an integer, and your application cannot do it. Your system cannot do it. So that's what I said. Run already did that for us. And that's the skill we wanted to learn. And this skill exists in all programming language. If you wanted to develop a good application, a robust application, you have to have this skill. So what is this skill? It's called exception handling. Okay, exception handling. Now this is another example. Okay, so let me give you code and you run it, and you see you will have a problem. I want you guys to run it and see what problem you run into. Okay, try this code. Just try this code and see what problem you have. Let me run it here. I will copy that code here, and then let me run it. Oh, I also get an error. And the error is that division by 0 as a student, right? We know we cannot divide the number by 0. So this kind of problem can happen in your code as well. So we needed to learn the skill, and this could happen to other things. If you wanted to open a file, but that file does not exist, what happens? So a runtime error will happen, and once it happens, it will suspend the execution of your code. So pretty much saying that is that your application stopped, doesn't work anymore. So we need to have a skill to do that. What kind of skill? You use try except statement in your code to trap the errors. So how do you do that? So the try statement works as follows. So let me get a student to help me with this. How do we use try? So let me just do the try first, okay? Let me just do the try except first. So if you go back to your code like this, if you go back and the code that we got from Alexia, so you see what happens. So if I do this, I use a try here, and then I put in the colon because the try is also okay. Try is also a code block. And after that, you see what happens. I use accept. Okay. I just use test. Okay, I will not do anything. Sorry. Just exception. Okay, with that. So now if I have this code, if I run it, so even I type in ABC, you see my application does not have error anymore. So the error does not appear anymore. And why? Why? Because I used to try except there. So how this works? Why I put a try and except there, then the application works. So I wanted to get a student to help me read this. So Kathleen, can you help me?
The try statement works as follows. First, the try clause, the statement between the try and except keywords, is executed. If no exception occurs, the except clause is skipped and execution of the try statement is finished.
Correct. All right, so let me get another student to read this slide. It's a little bit more text there, but I wanted to get April. Can you help me? April.
If an exception occurs during execution of the try clause, the rest of the clause is skipped. Then, if its type matches the exception named after the except keyword, the except clause is executed. And then execution continues after the try statement. If an exception occurs which does not match the exception named in the except clause, it is passed on to outer try statements. If no handler is found, it is an unhandled exception and execution stops with a message as shown above.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you use try, but you accept it does not catch that exception, it is still a problem. It is still a problem. So pretty much tell you that. So if you have an exception, that it will go to find the exception, see if it is matched or not. If it is matched, then it will execute the block of the exception block, okay, that matches, okay, like my code here. I just use exception and then this is my block. But in this block, I actually did nothing, right? I use pass here. So I did not do anything there. But it's okay because it matches. So now let me move on to next slide, okay? So Ryan, can you just help me with this?
A try statement may have more than one except clause to specify handlers for the different exceptions. At most, one handler will be executed. Handlers only handle exceptions that occur in the corresponding try clause, not in other handlers of the same try statement. An except clause may name multiple exceptions as a parenthesized tuple, for example. Except
Thanks.
runtime
Yeah,
error.
that's good enough. Thank you very much. You see here, we see accept, and you come back to my code. I just specified one exception. I just say exception. I will explain this later on. But you see, you use accept, then you can have different exceptions. Here you see in this slide, you can have runtime errors, typo errors, name errors, value errors. There are different kind of exceptions. You can put them together, and if you have a problem, the system will come to find a match. If that is matched, then this block will be executed. And here this slide says you can have multiple accepted. So let's just move on. Okay. All right, so let me get another student, Hunter.
Do you just want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. The last except clause may omit the exception name/names to serve as a wildcard. Use this with extreme caution since it is easy to mask a real programming error in this way. It can also be used to print an error message and then re-erase the exception, allowing a caller to handle the exception as well.
Thank you very much. You see, so a wildcard, that's the last except. You can use a wildcard, okay? So what does it mean here? I use the wildcard exception, okay? It is the parent, or we see if you just use exception, it means any kind of exception, okay? So I just use it so I can trap any kinds of exception. So I'm lazy. So that's why I use this. I'm not going to the specifics. And this slide told us, be careful to use this because it will trap all exceptions. But actually, you really wanted to have the opportunity to handle the specific problem. So you wanted to go as specific as possible. So it's just be careful when you use the wildcard. Okay. If you use a wildcard, so let me go to the next slide. You see how it looks like. You see this is the try statement, right? And then you see accept, accept, accept. And you see this accepted does not have anything. So they can trap any kind of exceptions. Okay. It doesn't have anything. It's a wild card. Okay. And here you see it will have to match that exception. If it does not match, if it doesn't match any one of these, then it will try to see if it matches that one. If not, then this wild card will cover all. If one matches here, and it will execute this block. It will execute this block, then it will not bother to check that one. It will not bother to check this one. It will not bother. Just like the if, else if, else if, else if statement. As long as one is satisfied, the system thinks the work is good. So it will execute that, then jump out the entire try block and execute code after the try block. Okay. After that. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. I hope you understand this. You can have multiple except, and in one except you can have multiple exceptions. Okay. And the last one can be a wild card. Okay. All right. So let's move on. So built-in exceptions. There are many exceptions that you can create a new exception. All exceptions must be built on these basic exceptions. We will talk about that because this is the parent of all exceptions. So let me give you this URL. I want you guys just try to read this. Spend like 2 minutes on it. So what kind of exceptions we have? You see, you have a lot of exceptions, right? Different exceptions. So there are a lot. There are a lot. Just quickly take a look at it. All right. Once you come back, so let me just explain this to you. So you see the try except statement has an optional else clause. This is like a loop. A loop has an optional else clause as well, if you remember that. It only be executed if the loop is not interrupted. That means you do not have a break statement in it. So your loop is executed smoothly. Of course, if you have continue in it, it's okay. So that means if it's not broken, then the else statement will be executed. Here, you have the optional else statement as well, which when presented must follow all except clauses. It is useful for code that must be executed if the try clause does not raise an exception. Okay, if your try clause is executed smoothly, then this else block will be executed. So let me show you what it looks like. So you have the try, and then you have a lot of accepted. Then you have the else. So if there's no exceptions, run this code. Okay, if there is accepted, execute those code when there is an exception, right? So that's what it looks like. So you have an else statement there. Okay, so for the try except, you can have also a finally clause. So the finally clause is always executed before leaving the try statement, whether an exception has occurred or not. When an exception has occurred in the try clause and has not been handled by an except clause, or it has occurred in an except or else clause, it is re-raised after the finally clause has been executed. The finally clause is also executed on the way out when any other clause of the try statement is left via a break, continue, or return statement. So this is kind of a texture. So what I meant is that when you read it, what does it mean? Actually, it's just tell you, you can have the finally block in your try except block as part of your try block. Okay, and it is always executed, and it is always executed when it finish your try. Even you have a break and a return statement in it, the finally block is also executed. Once it is executed, the whole try block is finished. So let me show you how it looks like this. Try, except, else, and then you have the finally block. This code will always be executed even you have an exception in your code. This will be executed. And even if you have a break in your try statement, okay, or you have a return in your try block, it will also be executed. Okay, so let me pause here and check if you have any question. Does it make sense to you? Okay, so if it makes sense to you, that's good. So let's move on to the next slide. And it's a quiz. Okay, so let me quiz you then. All right. How many accept statements can a try except blocker have? I want you to put your answer in the chat window. Okay. So let me. Okay, I get it. 2 answers. 3 no. 4. I still expect okay 5 now. All right. Okay, so the right answer is C. I think the majority of the class did it right. It's more than 0. Actually, you know, let's try that. Okay, let me just put a fan in here. So even you do not have an except, okay, but you have the finally, it's also okay. So the real answer should be 0 or more. Okay, should be like a 0 or more. Should like that. Okay. Right? You can have just 1, and you can even have 0. But if you have 0, then you have to have the finally. Without the finally, then it will be a problem. Okay. So let's go to the next quiz. All right. So let me do something here. All right. So let me do this. When is the finally block statements executed? All right. I think I got a 3, 4, 5, 6. Everyone is good. So the right answer is D. Finally block is always executed. Thank you very much for that. All right, so try this one. What is the output of the following code? Let me here. Let me get my I expected 2 more answers. All right, the right answer is D. Yes. And I can I get a student to explain why it is D? April, can you explain why it is D?
It is D because it prints the first one for try, and it also prints the finally, which makes it try finally.
Right, because the finally is always executed. So that's why finally is printed out. The right answer and the correct explanation. All right. So we say you cannot trap an exception, and also you can risk an exception. So the risk statement allows the programmer to force a specified exception to occur even there's no exception. Okay, even there's no exception. So let's do this. So think about that. If your code is good, and then let me just try to run it. Okay, I will use accept here. All right, so I will print a problem. Right, so this code here, if you type in a number, it should be fine, right? But if I do this, raise, arrow. Okay. So you see, if I use this recent arrow, okay. So what kind of arrow? So you can give the arrow name, this message, okay. You can do that. So what kind of arrow? You will just name it. For me, let's say, okay, Python arrow. We do that. And then this is the message. Okay. Of course, you see, I have a problem here because I have not defined what is the Python arrow. So I can just do a value arrow. Let me do this. Okay. So I force this arrow to happen, even though you do not have an exception. So let me run it. And then let me type in 5. You say what? You say this is printed out. And I do not have problem. I do not have problem in my code because you have this statement here. That means you force an exception to happen, even if there is no exception. So race will create an exception. It will force an exception. Okay, even everything is good because you use race, then you have that problem. Then you ask me, why do we do that? Are we stupid? No, we are not stupid. You need this skill because as a developer, you can write a very complicated application, and there's some exception. It's very specific to your application. You want to create that exception and make sure it is can be catched. Let's say if I work in a Citibank, okay, if you are trying to withdraw money from your account, but your account does not have that much money, so I will force an exception. I will say overdraft. That's an exception. I will risk that, so it will prevent you from over withdrawal, right? So you cannot withdraw more than the money you have in your account. So you need that kind of skill, or you need that kind of ability in your application. So that's why you need to use race. Okay. Does this make sense? Kathleen, does this make sense to you?
Yes.
Great. All right. So let's move on. So that's another skill, you have to have. All right. So this is another example. And you see, I use x equal to 10. And if x larger than 5, I will raise an exception. Okay. And what kind of exception? I will just give that message. So let me give you this code. And I want you to try it. And then you will see what do I mean. So let me give you this code. Okay. So here. All right. So how to try it? Let me just put all the code here. Okay. So that's my code. And then now I want to print out, I will just use, okay, accept X S. EXE exception as EX. Okay. So I'll do that. Let me just print out the error message. Okay. You will see just print it out. Okay. See what happens. Let me just print this out. It will print out this message, okay? So let me do that. Let me run it. You see here, that's the error message. And it's exactly the message we put it here, okay? We say x should not exceed 5, the value of x was 10, okay? So that's the message you put it in the exception, and then now you catch it, and then you print it out. Okay, so you can raise an exception, and then you can give a meaningful text for that message, for that error message, and then you print it can be printed out. All right, so let me move on. I think we are going to finish our class very soon today. Okay, so you see, I raise the exception, I can trap it, I can raise it again. So you just see reset, then an exception will happen. Now you need another try to catch it. Without the auto try, then your application will stop working. Okay, your application will stop working. All right, so let me move on. So what do I mean? Another try. So if I do not have this, okay, so let me just do this. If I do not have that, and if I see raise the problem again, so what I need to do is that I will have to have another try. This is called an auto try. Okay, the auto try. Then you need to have the exapt and something like this. Okay, so you need to try this exception raised here, because this try block cannot handle it anymore. It already exiting this try block, but in the end, you reach that exception again. So you have to have another try. Okay. If you don't have that, your application will stop working. It will stop working. Remember that. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. So it's an exercise. I want you to improve this code so the division can continue. Error message can be printed out when there is an error. Okay, let me just copy all things to you and give you 5 minutes to do this. Okay, can trap the error, and you need to print out the error message. All right. Just do some modification to the code. If you're finished, raise your hand. Anyone finished? Hunter, you finished it?
No, not yet.
So Catherine, how about you?
Not yet.
Do you guys know how to do that? How to do it? Patton, do you know how to do it?
Yeah, but I'm not done yet.
Okay.
I think I need help.
Okay. So you have a question or you want me to do it with you together?
Can you do it?
All right. So can I do it? Yes, I can do it. So this is the code, right? So the requirement is that I need to trap the error, right? And then I need to print out the error message. So how do I do that? So here I will just use use a try, because I know there could be a problem if you divide it by 0, right? So if I try it, then it should not give me the problem. If it's 0, then I will use except, okay, exception as ex. So I just print out the problem. So it will give me that exception message, error message. And then even you divide it by 0 and you trap the error, so the loop can continue. So you can still divide it by 11 divided by 16. So let me save the code and run now. You see what I got. You see 10 divided by 1, 10 divided by 4, 10 divided by 8, 10 divided by 5, then 10 divided by 0. I print out that error message. So you trap that problem, and then now it can continue. So your application continues to work. So 10 divided by 11, this is what you get. Then 10 divided by 16, that's what you get. 10 divided by 20, this is what you get. All right, so you guys got it? Make sense?
Oh, my code has problem. Can you just check it?
Yes.
Oh, when I run it, it says that right here the except is an invalid syntax.
You see why it is a problem? You say you accept you have an underscore exception. It's not, okay? You cannot have an underscore. And then you need to start another block you after the colon, right? So why print is in the same line? Okay, if you do that, and then let me explain this to you, okay? Even you do that, you really did not finish your code, because if there's an exception now, it jump out of the for loop. So it will not continue. It will not divide by 11 anymore. So you needed to put your try within the loop. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So let me share my screen again, and I then give you the homework. You say you need to have the try within the loop. So then the loop will continue, even if you have a problem within the loop. Okay. You capture that error within the loop. All right. So let's do the homework. So what is the homework? So this homework is to improve last homework we did. And I ask you guys to do a screenshot of what Ren did. So please take care use the input value integer 0 to 30 inclusive. and assign it to x. Set a variable y to y value to 10. Check x value in your code. If x is less than y, loop n from 0 to x and print out n plus x within the loop. Okay, if x is no less than y, I would like you guys to use else. No less than y means x could equal to y, so you need to consider that. Okay, if x is no less than y, loop n from y to x and print out n minus y within the loop. Okay, and that's what I asked in last homework, right? And now is the new part. The user can type in anything. You ask for a number, the user can type in a character, right? So if it is not a number, please print out what the user has inputted. And also print out this is not a valid input. That means you need to print out what the user inputted, and you also need to say this is not a valid input. After that, you ask the user to input a number again. Okay, Ryan pretty much did all that already, but now go to next slide. This will go on until a user input a number. If the input is a number, then it works like it was in the last homework. Okay, so if the user inputted number, then it works exactly as what it is for the last homework. But you need to think about that, okay? This part. So you need to trap the errors and you need to continue until the user type in a number, and the number must be between 0 and 30. Okay? So I will give you guys this homework in the classroom. And if you want to capture what Ruan did, you just need to do a little bit of modification to it, okay? You guys have a question on it?
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can you please post the recording of this class on Google Classroom?
I will do that then. Any other question? All right, if there's no other question, then the class is dismissed. Okay. Thank you all.